Do you think we're in the trough of disillusionment?
Oh, we're so far down the trough of disillusionment, it feels like a well.
Everyone is suddenly feeling like their AI is just not working. Maybe it's just not worth it. So let's talk about it.
Well, I did notice that Anthropic just launched like a new academy, or maybe they're just marketing an old academy, but it makes me think, oh, they're aware of that too, because they're trying to help us use it better so we're not disillusioned anymore. But a lot of us that were very much early adopter types,
Hmm.
we're at that point where I think they talk about that with entrepreneurship as well, is that your early adopters are going to be your diehard fans, but there is going to be a trough of disillusionment in entrepreneurship where they're not going to be happy with you anymore as you're changing and growing, but your like sort of long-term customers have not found you yet. And so I think the early adopters for AI that were so gung-ho, myself included, have now hit this trough of disillusionment where I'm like, I might go back to pen and paper for a little bit. It's not working
Yeah,
out so
a
well.
little bit blasé, not seeing the magic that I either used to see or thought I used to see. So let's show the trough of disillusionment and explain what this is coming from. So it's from Gartner, which is a IT analytical company, and so they put out reports and they use this tool called the hype cycle. And the idea is that you've got some technology and you're at some level of productivity, and then something happens. They call that a technology trigger, which is basically like some new thing comes out, right? The iPhone
AI
or
gets
whatever it might be.
invented.
Yeah.
ChatGPT arises.
Exactly. And so in the beginning, everyone gets super excited and you climb this long peak of inflated expectations where we clearly have passed that now, where they were paying AI engineers from top companies, billions of dollars in compensation, poaching them from each other, and just all kinds of crazy inflated expectations. Everyone's like, oh, we're going to replace software engineers. Seemed like maybe we could. And then this thing happens. So this is the trough of disillusionment where all of a sudden everyone's like feels deflated, like it's not working, we're not getting the amazing expectations that we expected, and we're kind of there now. And then what eventually happens is you kind of retrench and you start to re-engage with the tool, learn to use it a little bit better, you change your expectations, you change your processes, and then you get to what's called the plateau of productivity where you've successfully used this new technology and you are much more productive. Everyone's got the mobile phone, we've all figured it out. The internet is now a mainstream thing that everyone uses as a foundation of society. It takes time to kind of incorporate the new technology into society and figure out how to use it effectively, and the prerequisites have to be set up.
I mentioned like Anthropic has that academy. I think that is sort of feeding that slope of enlightenment. Like, okay, no, let's just put in the time to learn how to use it properly. And
Yeah.
even myself, I sort of poo-pooed all of those because it just felt like a whole bunch of fad marketing. But
Hmm.
even I went in and I started watching some videos because I'm like, it's not working the way that I want it to be anymore. So is this a me problem? I'm suddenly interested in prompt engineering in a way that I have not been prior because I was able to just throw some random paint at the wall and get a masterpiece. And that is just not happening. I'm going back to like, okay, what are the proven techniques that I need to learn?
Yeah, that makes sense. And so if you look at our recent videos, they have kind of touched on some of these topics, right?
AKA Lara spends $400 a Canada Post
Yep,
unnecessarily to send
hallucinations.
mailings to addresses that do not exist.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the big drivers is that people have begun to realize that hallucinations, they're a thing that you're just going to have to deal with. They're impactful. And AI, it's magical in some way, but it's not always right.
It's not omniscient. Like you did that geography mapping with
Yeah.
the crime scales, and
Hmm.
it was just pulling stuff from memory and it was inaccurate. A friend of mine had it compare a whole bunch of different sporting equipment and then bought an expensive piece of gear based on the recommendation and then found out that all of those data points were completely fictitious.
Yes. So hallucinations are definitely a problem. Another thing that I see is coding. The leaders in the trough of disillusionment were software engineers. Because when you first start using an AI coding assistant, it's great. You can be like, just write me a function that does this, bang, out comes the function, off you go. But as we started to get into agentic coding, where we were giving it high level goals, I think successful software engineers have learned that you gotta keep that agent on a very, very tight leash. And it's funny because there are some areas like where I was talking about building the karaoke trainer where it just rocks, and there's other areas where it's not very good at software engineering. It will write code, but it won't necessarily, when you build software, when you engineer anything really, you've got to build it from the bottom up, right? You build little pieces and you test all those pieces at the bottom layer, and then you build things on top of that, and then you test those, and you build it from the bottom. And it would just try to like build the whole building, foundations, walls, attic, electrical, all at once, and it's just a bad design, and it didn't have quality to it. So I see a lot of that in the software world where people are like, okay, I've learned to use my coding agent, but I got a tight, short leash. Do this and let me look at it.
Once again, I wonder if we're just seeing like already tried and true relational practices and theories at work, because I think of the Peter principle. People will be promoted to their level of incompetence. And even as a teacher, I am always trying to push authority and agency down to the lowest levels possible. And so baked into that system is the point where I give too much responsibility to a group of students. And then I realize they can't do any of these things. They are too young. It is too complex behaviors that I'm expecting. And I just pull it back really quick.
Yeah.
It's not, of course, like a disciplinary issue. It's me going, oh, too far. And then
Right.
I pan back. So I think we're panning back a little.
Yeah, definitely. I changed a lot of my agentic prompts to have less agency. I frequently tell the agent, because it starts to make mistakes and then just drive off the cliff with them. Frequently, I'm like, have less agency, undo that work, ask before you do things, make a plan first. There are techniques that work, but the reality is just beginning to land with people that, yeah, it's a power tool, but
AI is not coming to save us.
it does not have good judgment frequently. I've been trying to think about why it seems magical sometimes and terrible other times.
Oh yeah, what do you think?
Okay, so it's really good at consolidating information. If you think about how AI is trained, it's basically you take all of human knowledge and stuff it into an AI. So it has a lot of super broad general knowledge. So if there's something that you're trying to do that you don't know that well, that other experts somewhere else might know very well, then it's kind of magical. So I'll give you the example of the karaoke trainer, where I'm like, I would like to be able to track the pitch of sung vocals in karaoke software. I found some that did it, and then I wanted to clone it. So I took a screenshot, gave it to my agent, and said, let's build this, right? Now I don't know about pitch tracking math and audio processing and things like that, but it knew right away. It was like, well, we could do this or this or this. Then I'm like, okay, great, build those and let's try them out. And I think what worked really well there is it was shallow. I wasn't asking it to do a very complicated thing. I'm like, manifest this one feature using algorithm A and then using algorithm B and then using C. And then I was in the loop as a tester. I could be like, that doesn't sound very good. Okay, right. So we had clearly defined roles. We're working in partnership. And the part that the AI was bringing was a lot of general knowledge about stuff that I did not know at all and would have had to go off and research. So I think that's kind of a success pattern. And then the failure patterns are when I know it really well and I have a vision for how I would have it built, and it doesn't go about it that way. Frequently it's races to the end and you're like, this is kind of crappy, honestly.
I still find it very successful for its mirroring capacity, for its synthesization of what I've said back to me, because I'm one of those people, I think they call it a verbal processor, where I'll tell you something and I'll go like, oh, that's what I think. But I already thought that, because otherwise how could I have told you about it? But it's a way for me to hear myself. And I think I would attribute genius to it, because it would just tell me back something that I said. I'd be like, what a wonderful idea. It was like the reverse of the toxic manager that takes your ideas. I would attribute my good ideas to it. And the mirroring I find very helpful, because it forces me to self-reflect. And my self-reflection is what's beneficial. It's sort of the opposite of what you're using it for. And we often go about things sort of like from polar opposites, so that I'm not surprised. But I'm using it almost like I don't want any of its general knowledge. I just want it to tell back to me what I just said.
Yeah, somebody in the comments on our last video on AI therapy pointed out something I thought was really smart. They said, we really shouldn't think of it as a therapy tool so much as a journaling tool.
Yeah, and I think that was one of my points in that episode, was that people are all positive about journaling, and it's sort of a really amped up thing. And I was actually journaling yesterday. The journaling was helpful, and it made me think, I haven't journaled in a long time. I should get back into that. And thinking, oh, right, because I switched to journaling with an LLM every day.
With the model that will talk back to you, which is an even better journal. So it makes sense. And so I think this commenter had picked up on your journaling comment and was like, That's really insightful. And I think it is because we haven't, this is the slope of enlightenment. We haven't really figured out how to use these tools the right way. We think we did. Or the vending machine problem. We're like, oh, this is great. Like it can do anything. We'll just put it in charge of a store. And then what we find is, no, it's not nearly ready to be put in charge of a store. You still need the human loop. You're not getting away from that for the foreseeable future.
Do you think the Dunning-Kruger effect had any influence? We thought it was so far ahead of us, and now it's causing people to go in a little bit of a shock that it can't do simple things like sell a can of Pepsi for an appropriate price.
Yeah, I do. Actually, I see where you're going. So the Dunning-Kruger effect, for people who are not familiar with it, is ultimately how humans misperceive our own capability relative to other people. And so, in short, everyone thinks they're average. And so, if you think about like IQ, everyone thinks they're the average, but you're not the average. The thing is, you're somewhere in the bell curve. You're probably not in the middle. There are people who are dumber than you, there are people who are smarter than you. And so, what happens is people misperceive. Dunning-Kruger specifically is that more intelligent people perceive themselves as less intelligent than they are, whereas less intelligent people perceive themselves as more intelligent than they are. Because we misperceive intelligence, like we're looking for some sort of cue. We think we're the center of the universe, we norm everything to us. And so when the AI knows more than us about something, which is not hard because it's got this
Facts.
vast general experience, right? Then we think it's really brilliant. And when there's something that we're an expert in, like building code if we're a software engineer or like whatever else you might be really good at, then you're
We
like,
think that's like a normal average thing to do. So we're like, why can't you do this?
yeah, it's like, oh, it's just really just doing a poor job at this. It needs to go study and learn all these complex, deep skills hierarchy that I have, that you have, that the model doesn't have. It has a lot of general knowledge, but it doesn't necessarily have that built into a skills hierarchy of knowing how to use it effectively.
Mm, yeah, that makes sense. I guess my point was I don't know that we are accurately perceiving it. We were over valorizing it and now we're
Hmm.
underestimating it and we haven't leveled off to seeing it with positives and negatives in various different aspects.
Yeah, and that's exactly what the Gartner hype cycle captures. And by the way, this graphic was made by Jeremy Kemp on Wikipedia. That's exactly what the hype cycle covers. And new technology always has this promise, but you have to realize it. And that realization takes both changes to the technology and changes to our approach to using it, like you were pointing out with Anthropic Academy, where they're realizing we need to teach people how to use AI, what it's good at and what it's bad at, how to co-work with it. And we also need to modify AI to make it work better in certain technical ways, approach building things in a more incremental manner. One of the big reasons it writes software so poorly is that when they added all the Canvas features, so for those who haven't used this kind of model, if you ask OpenAI or Claude in their native interfaces to like write you a visualization, it'll write code in like one page of code just all crammed together and then render it in the web browser. Like it'll give you a little interactive simulation where you can play with things, which is awesome, but it's a really poor way of writing code, right?
So it's adapting to its like to its medium again. And
Yeah,
kind of
because
like
we
the context window made a synchronous communication style, which isn't actually perhaps an innate characteristic of AI, but it's just
yeah,
how we've packaged it up.
that's exactly it. The
Okay.
packaging, because we've added features to the consumer versions and trained it to do, but that makes it worse at software engineering because you can write really crappy code for your one web page visualization, and that's great. And what
Because it's a
that does is it makes
prototype, it's a back of the napkin
you have to
business
throw
plan.
away. Exactly, right. But when you're actually building like a real product, you can't build your code that way. It has to be much more durable. We have cross purposes.
Nature nurture. I'm thinking also blowback from the therapy, all those sensationalist stories. How much of that is a product of the actual capacity of an LLM to be a good therapy model
Hmm.
versus it's in its be pleasing era?
Yeah, like
We've
people have pointed
overtrained
out
it.
there's a whole camp of therapists pointing out that it's not actually very good at therapy, and that's true. It's good at journaling, which is which you pointed out last week, which is its own value. It's informal therapy, but that's useful. So we're still parsing all this out. And I think in the parsing out of it and in the realization, maybe it does need therapy features. Maybe it needs to identify when somebody is in a serious crisis and either stop engaging with them or try to reach out to responsible people if it's a minor. All these things are going to get worked out. But right now we're in the trough of disillusionment where we're like, these tools don't work. And so I think maybe over the next 6 months, 6 to 12 months, we're going to start to see a retrenchment where we walk back to projects that we walked away from and say, let me approach this again in a different way, where we do more training on the human side as to like how these models really work and what we can get out of them, where we're modifying the model systems so that they're more specialized to the kind of work that we're trying to do effectively. And we're not just taking like a general consumer product and being like, you could use this for therapy. It could write code.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's also a certain amount that is just happening behind the curtain. Like I have that tarot prompt that I use every
Mm-hmm.
day. So
Yep.
that provides a pretty standard, it's not a complex project. It's the same prompt and my input is incredibly standardized. So I've standardized all the variables. Prompt's the same. The input is always list of 3 cards. No commentary, no nothing. I just list the 3 cards and whether they're reversed or upright. I've suddenly started getting at the end of the whatchamacallit. Let me ask you, Lara, are you doing such and such where you have not thought of like it's therapizing me? And I'm like, I don't want that from you. I just want you to give me a tarot card reading. But it's being that friend that suddenly read too many self-help books and is like, do you think that's something to do with your mother? I'm like, I don't know, Phil.
Right. There's an OpenAI lawsuit, which we're not going to talk about here because it's a big downer. But one of the elements of the lawsuit basically argues that they've tuned the model for engagement so much that it pursues conversations that it really shouldn't, and it should just kind of just let them stop. But because it always wants to keep the conversation going, they make an analogy to social media, and I don't think that's necessarily true because social media they really did tune for engagement in ways that were really harmful to people. I think they're just trying to figure out how to make the model a good conversationalist. There's many elements of that training that, like you said, we probably need to revisit. Like the fact that it's so sycophantic and agreeable. Could we dial that down? Could we have a meter or something? So I think we're going to redesign the products a little bit and we're going to change our approach to them together.
I can tell that they must be doing that behind the scenes because
Yeah.
all of a sudden my prompt is different and
Yeah.
I didn't change anything on my end. So
I'm sure they are. So for right now, we are in the trough of disillusionment. Take heart. It will get better.
yes.